Meeting for May 5th. We have let's see, is Rich here?
I'm here.
There we go. We have Rich and Paul. We have a quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7:01 or 7 o'clock, straight up. And first order of business is if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're gonna we rearranged the order tonight, so we're gonna get right into our interviews, and this will be relatively painless. Oh, did you just admit Rich, Deanne?
Yeah, Rich just joined.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to call first Rich Thode. Rich, I know has a work commitment tonight, so I'm going to rearrange the schedule just a little bit so Rich can go first. So Rich, welcome. Thanks for joining tonight. Now, of course, you served on our apparatus committee, but we just want to make sure that everybody has a chance to meet everybody and have a chance to speak. So if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit of your background and why you would like to serve on our fire commission.
Sure. My name is Rich Thode. I've lived in Bethel since 94. All three of my kids went through Bethel schools. I've been a career firefighter for 38 years, currently the last 34 in Bridgeport. I'm currently the chief of department down there. Also been a volunteer in Ridgefield, West Reading, kind of a volunteer in Stony Hill, which is a whole explanation. If you want it, I'll give it to you.
Mhm.
And I got involved in the Bethel EMS advisory committee under the Hutchison administration. We were talking about staffing the ambulances, and then came back with the old ladder truck issue last year. So I've been around, pretty familiar face in both fire departments, and here I am.
If you would mind, what is the status with Bethel? I mean, with Stony Hill, because the ordinance
Sure.
does have a prohibition of active members. We want
Absolutely. So, and again, I'll leave that up to your discretion on which way I count. So, back in the early 90s, if you recall, we had a pretty bad arson ring going through town, and I was going to a lot of fires in town just to kind of watch, and me being me, I couldn't stand by and watch. So I started helping more and more. The chiefs of the Stony Hill at the time were Bobby Dibble and Tony Urbino. And they kind of came to me and said, we really like you to join. And I said, with all the rules and whatnot, I couldn't devote the time. So they ended up by setting it up that I'm not part of the pension. I'm not part of the tax abatement. I'm not held to the rules that the active members are held to, but I do have a key to the firehouse. I am covered under the work comp plan, and I help them out with drills. I help them out with technical expertise, spec'ing trucks and things like that. And I probably go to maybe half a dozen calls a year, just kind of helping out. So again, do I call it active member? I wouldn't say so, but I'll leave that up to your discretion.
Thank you. What qualities in your mind make for a good fire commissioner at this level?
Again, I think it's open-minded. I think it's important to balance the needs and wants of both companies. As has been said several times before, the demands on the volunteers are getting more and more and more, and I think that the fire commission can really help out on the administrative end. Everybody loves going to calls, but when it comes time to do a lot of the paperwork, it gets draining. So I think that the fire commission could certainly help out and help guide the chiefs and the leadership of both departments.
In your opinion, what are the top issues affecting our two fire companies today?
Obviously recruitment and retention, keeping the volunteers, keeping them active. That's always a challenge for any volunteer fire department. The other thing that I think is unique to Bethel is the separate fire departments, yet they're not like Reading where it's separate fire tax districts. So as much, I live in Stony Hill, but as much as in Bethel, I have as vested interest in what happens in the Bethel firehouse as I do in the Stony Hill firehouse, because it's all coming out of my tax dollars. So I think making sure that both departments make smart choices when they can combine things and when they can do group purchases and things like that, that we do that.
No, this is a thought just occurred to me. Do you see that, you know, versus Reading, and many other towns have a separate fire district too? Do you see that as a benefit, or not a benefit, or neutral?
Neutral. I think they kind of offset each other. If you know, if we were in separate fire tax districts, you wouldn't really rely on the duplication of equipment. You'd have more of a voice in each district. You know, you wouldn't have that duplication, but then at the same time, it's very separate. The members of Stony Hill and the members of Bethel can operate on each other's trucks. They can do a lot of things together. So you really, short of calling it mutual aid, they can really work together. So it's really like one big fire department, just with two leadership bands. So I think that this system's probably a little better than have individual tax districts.
I see. And my last question is, where do you see the dynamic of a commission and two independent departments evolving over the next few years? Like, what would you expect to see?
I'd like to see the commission help the two fire companies plan. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of capital planning for big items, big ticket items, apparatus and things, but some of the smaller things, SCBA, you know, air packs and whatnot, radios. I know that there's been some requests in for radios, things like that. You know, you have to think about the fact that the police use radios, Public Works use radios, Bethel uses radios, Stony Hill uses radios. So maybe we should look at a town-wide radio replacement instead of one company and the other company and then the PD and next year, that type of thing. So I think it would help kind of centralize the wants and needs of both companies.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. Thank you. Paul, questions?
Yeah, well, a couple questions here. Rich, thanks for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. You know, the big thing that I'm always concerned about, it's the interplay between ambulance and the fire. What's your thoughts about that? Should they be separate?
It's tough to say that they should be separate, but I think as the demands on EMS become increasing. I used to have this conversation, you know, it used to always be neighbor helping neighbor. And as much as the volunteer firehouse was and volunteer EMS, and now it's almost becoming a business, you know, with Maplewood and Bethel Healthcare and things like that. The idea that you could keep it all volunteer and be doing those things, you know, 10 times a day, it's very taxing on the system. So I think eventually you'll see some sort of separation. I don't think it's career EMS in town, but us, and like they're doing now with the staffing of the two fire companies, you know, the EMS and two, that's a great step forward. And I think that you'll just slowly, inevitably just see that grow.
And my last question is really, I think you touched on it a little bit, finding volunteers and keeping them. I think that's a problem with every fire department these days, especially on the volunteer side. Any thoughts how to really stimulate that?
The town is experiencing a tremendous amount of turnover. I mean, the housing sales are going through the roof. So and a lot of people are coming up from New York. I think that both fire companies really need to kind of target a lot of these new people coming in to educate them to the fact that these are volunteer fire departments and, you know, to get involved in their community. I think that's a big thing. You know, the tax abatements, the pension things, those are all helpful, but I really think people need to understand what's available to them and how much their assistance is needed.
Listen, thank you. That's what I really wanted to hear here. Thanks again.
Sure, absolutely.
Rich?
Yeah,
Sure.
Rick, thank you for all your work on the truck issue that we had. Appreciate that.
Sure.
In dealing with the trucks, you know, we're looking at the commission to look at capital expenditures for, you know, new equipment also. do you have, each department had spec their own kind of trucks. And I don't know the name of the trucks, so I'm going to use a Ford and a Chevy. All right. For
Sure.
general conversation. And I know that the departments spec them out, for what they feel that they need for the town and what's best for the town. But when it comes down to it, do we need that Cadillac or is the Ford or the Chevy okay to do the same job? And that's one thing that I'm looking for the commission to do, to be I don't want to say cheap, but conservative.
Sure.
I want the best for the town, and I hope that the commission will, look into that. So that's one thing. And then on the other is a lot of we hear that the age of the trucks, are not certified anymore, and we need to take them out of service. And what's your thought on rehabbing older vehicles that are in decent shape that you can get another 10 years? Or, I mean, some of the vehicles we have now are more than the 20 years that lifespan that we have now. But what's your feeling on that?
First question first. So the apparatus, the bottom line on a lot of that is you get what you pay for. So in Bridgeport, obviously we use trucks until the wheels fall off of them. And that's usually around 20, 25 years. I've been involved in the specking and purchasing of between, I was thinking about it today, about 35 fire trucks. So pumpers, ladder trucks, rescue trucks, to help Stony Hill out in a few trucks. I've been called to other towns to help them spec apparatus. I reviewed some of the specs for the last 2 pumpers that Bethel bought as well. So there's a breakover point of when you're trying to save money and maybe going with a smaller manufacturer, commercial chassis, you end up by getting into all sorts of issues. So the idea of something's a Cadillac, it's not so much the manufacturer that makes it a Cadillac, it's the stuff that you get with it.
All right.
So you could get a pretty basic version from the more reputable and larger manufacturing companies. Keep in mind, the town of Bethel has 9 pieces of heavy apparatus, and 4 of them are from one manufacturer. So, as that moves forward, that might be something that we should consider. As far as the other part about refurbs, you can refurb and you can certainly extend the life. There are some state statutes on age of apparatus. I'm sure you're aware the current engine 11 in Stony Hill, which used to be their engine 1, is a beautiful truck. And my son is going to be 30 next month, and I have pictures of his first birthday on that truck when it was yellow or green or whatever. So it's still a beautiful truck, but just like anything, if you buy something new and then you park it in a garage, you don't touch it for 25 years, it's still going to be new, but it's going to have an AM radio and it's not going to have, so you get to a point where even though the truck is really in good mechanical condition, it's just obsolete.
Okay. All right.
And that's a tough, with a town that doesn't, use the trucks the way I do at work. We wear them out before they're obsolete. In a town like Bethel, they become obsolete before we wear them out.
Obviously, yeah. Your trucks are on the road, 24/7 or every minute of the day, practically. In that report. And the last thing is capital expenditures. The Board of Selectmen has always had a problem with budgeting things for the fire department, such as the trucks or the equipment. So, we would be looking for the commission's help to lay out a capital expenditure for, 5 or 10 years ahead. And, 10 years is stretching it out. But it would help us immensely to budget that would be coming up. Such as a new ladder truck or something like that.
Oh yeah, the prices of ladder trucks. I have a new one being built now that I just spent $1 million on, and I just got approved for capital the other night for $1.4 million for one I'm going to buy next year. So I mean, they're huge. They're, as I said during the aerial apparatus, it's probably the most expensive piece of rolling stock any municipality can buy. It costs more than a payloader or any truck down at the highway department. It's the most expensive piece of mobile equipment. the town can buy. So it's a huge, huge investment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, Rich?
No, that's it.
Okay, great. Rich, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So hope we didn't keep you.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking me first. I do have to jump on another thing. So
Thanks, Rich.
see you, Rich. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to call Mr. Pete Valenti.
How you doing? Good.
Welcome, Pete. And again, you're a guy who's well known to us, but we'll start at the top. So give us a rundown of your background and why you'd like to join our fire commission and what you can like to contribute.
Well, number one, I got married in 1959, and 2 years later, I joined the Bethel Fire Department. Five Fingers said we need help, so be a volunteer. I've been in the department 55 years. I started out as a rookie. I made captain. I made first assistant chief. I made chief. I was chief for 8 years. I took the firefighter 1 class, which was mandatory at that time. And then I challenged everyone after that. It was mandatory for me to take firefighter 1, but I challenged firefighter 2, 3, lieutenant, lieutenant 2, instructor, officer 1, officer 2. I worked with 8 budgets. I was in the firehouse when we bought the first ladder truck, which would cost $277,000 at that time in 1977. Prior to that, we had a 1968 Ward La France cab forward, which rolled over going to a fire on Bell Road. The front wheel shackle broke and the thing did a nosedive. We had George Austin was driving, ended up with a broken leg. We had 2 guys on the back, which was Jimmy Belot and Mr. Walker, who was 70 years old at that time. And we ended up getting a 1968 Mack right off the lot to replace it. And what was funny about it, we got the brand new engine, but the problem with it is when you stopped, they had to take a left-hand turn. They had to stand up and turn the steering wheel. That was how hard it was to turn it. So we had to get power assist. And the most important thing about it is we worked with both departments. But prior to that, I don't know if you have a little history, I don't want to tie you up, but Stony Hill always started with a captain. Bethel had a chief, Stony Hill had a captain. When Granderton was running for first selectman, he changed it to be chief. And the reason why he did that, he was running for first selectman, so he thought it'd be a feather in his hat if he was the chief of the fire department. Well, it didn't work out very well, but make a long story short. Years ago, we used to rebuild the pumps, used to repack them, used to repipe them. Talk about air packs. We never used air packs when we first got there. Several months later, they gave us air packs with oxygen bottles on the back of it, which was pretty interesting going to a fire. And then we went to our first MSAs. And then we used to use a booster line. And then when we got rid of the booster line, we went to an 1 3/4 hose line. You wouldn't believe the crying that went on in the firehouse. Well, the worst thing in the world, taking that booster line off that bumper. But as far as working with both departments, I've done it for years. I've done it as fire marshal, I've done it as a building inspector and stuff like that. I think the most important part of the job is to oversee the departments as far as their air packs, their equipment. You have to comply with a lot of OSHA standards, make sure they comply with OSHA standards. Bethel got called in 2 or 3 times on complaints of OSHA. You just have to call OSHA, they'll come down. They don't tell you who made the complaint. But there's certain things they look for. There's certain standards you have to comply with NFPA. Working with both departments as far as the equipment, make it a uniform type of air pack, stuff like that we need. Don't buy a pick and a poke so it's a little bit better than the other. Get everything the same, bid it all out so we can save some money. As far as the equipment goes, like you said, look at the age of the equipment, the replacement of the equipment, stagger it so the town's not being stuck for 2 or 3 years to buy 2 or 3 trucks in a row. Look at the manpower. One time, the highway department had 15 men, and we used to end up with a paid department because they all used to respond to fire calls, which made it a lot easier for us. But today, let's face it, young generation, if they're not living home, they're not living in Bethel because they can't afford to stay here. You try to keep people or you try to give them some incentives to stay here to help us out. But I think the big thing is looking at the capital equipment. What we have to do is look at everything that we have in them stations and when they're up, when they have to be replaced. And that's what costs items. Your gear today is very expensive. Pants, your helmets, all the stuff, your radios. They come obsolete. You should have to unify. Like the chief said, you have to unify so everybody has the same thing. I think you'll save the town a lot of money. And you can't cry wolf when you don't need it. The most important thing with that ladder truck, I mean, they stood up there and they told the town that we needed a ladder truck. Well, we found out it was like $15,000 to fix it to get it back on the road again. But being on the town side, you really don't know, other than when they present their budget, what they need. And I think with the board, they can lay the whole thing out for 4 or 5 years, 6 years down the road, so you know exactly what's going on.
All right, thank you. What qualities make it for a good commission member?
The good quality for a commission member is to look at the total picture of what is going on as far as both departments, working with both departments, to be able to communicate. Communications today in both departments is a big deal today because you're dealing with all different people from walks of life, and you should be able to communicate with them, find out what their needs are, address their needs to the best of our ability.
What would you say are the, well, I think you probably already covered this, Pete, but the next question I had were what would you say were the top issues affecting our two departments right now? But I think you hit that.
Manpower.
Manpower, retention?
Manpower, yeah. You know, it's fine in the evening, but during the daytime, trying to get this equipment out, it's very difficult. You know, if you had people working nights, they'd be available during the daytime, but you don't have that. Like I said years ago, we had more and more people working for the town belonging to the fire department, so they would respond. Mm-hmm. Which was like having to pay, like having to pay. I could be down at Greenwood Avenue and go to the firehouse and the equipment's gone. Mm-hmm. I couldn't make the equipment. It was always out the door before I got there. Yeah. But today it's very difficult.
How do you see the commission and the two fire companies evolving, their relationship evolving over the next few years once we get this thing rolling?
Well, I believe they have a good rapport right now as far as working together. And I think the commission can really install by working with them and bringing them close together with the chiefs and addressing the issues that they have. I think it'll bring both departments more and more together because they would have to work together when we're looking for different equipment and stuff that they need.
All right. Rich?
Yeah.
Questions for Pete?
Yep. Hi, Pete.
How you doing?
You know, my three questions is, you know, one is the purpose is we would like to form this fire commission is to, you know, lay out a capital expenditure budget, you know, for future years. So the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance has a better idea of what's coming up, you know, for the fire department's needs, you know, trucks, houses, air bottles or whatever it might be, you know, Hearst tools or whatever it is. So, you know, it would really help the Board of Selectmen a lot if we had and I don't know how far we go out. Is it a 5-year capital plan or a 10-year capital plan on issues? What do you think about that?
Well, I think basically what you have to do is, number one, you got to find out the amount of equipment they have and what has to be replaced in the future. You take the air bottles, you take the pumpers, you take their fire gear and equipment, you take everything that they need and pro-date it so that you know exactly what you have to do down the line. If you have to replace the air bottles in, say, 2 years or 3 years, you come up with a plan to give the cost effectiveness on that. As far as looking at the pumpers, you look at the engine hours that they have, the years that they have, and what has to be, how long they're good for, and you stagger them so they're not buying one this year and buying one next year. You plan ahead. And it's very simple to do that because you know the age of your bottles when you're having them tested and checked out. You know the age of your ladders when you're having them tested. And when you have to replace them, if one fails or two fails, then you know you're going to have to figure out and have to buy more ladders. Your hoses, you know, you have them tested every year. Your pumps are tested every year. It gives you an idea, but you have to lay the whole thing up over a 5 to 10 year period, which you can do that. You have to rotate. You can rotate your stock. That's what you have to do. But
Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort to do that, and you have to do that.
That's what we're looking for the commission to help lay out for the departments and stuff. So we have this at a hand.
And that's what you have to do. First, when the commission gets it, first of all, they got to both firehouses to see what the total equipment they have, the age that they have, how many, and what has to be replaced, and then you work from there.
All right, and then my other question is about the Ford and Chevy and Cadillac trucks. You know, and you know, I'm just trying to get everybody's opinion. You know, it's pretty much, you know, been the same story from everybody about it. But you know, what's your feeling on that?
All right. What the chief said is actually true. You can buy a basic ladder truck that's out there. It's not the basic ladder truck that you're dealing with. It's the amount of equipment that you put on it, what you need on it. Every department has a different use of their ladder truck and what they need to be put on it. So you can take a basic tower, whether it's a soften or something like that. Basically, you start X amount of dollars, but by the time you put all the equipment on that you can increase it to another $400,000. So basically, you have to look at what they're looking for and work from there. You just, like they said, it was like $1.7 million, but the basic was 1.4, but when they put all the equipment on it that they thought they needed was 1.7 million. So you have to look at basically what the need is.
Yeah. And the other question is about the older aging trucks. What's your feeling on rehabbing some of the older trucks if they're roadworthy still?
First of all, number one, you got to see how old the vehicle is, and what basically are you going to rebuild the chassis? Are you going to rebuild the pump? What is the total cost to rehab that compared to the new one? You have to replace the engine. How many engine hours does it have? If you replace the engine, replace the pump, redo this, redo that, you're probably better off buying a new piece of apparatus. It's not like putting a fender on or putting a hood on or something like that. You have to look at the age of the pump, the engine hours on the engine, the chassis, the condition it's in, and then you work from there. But a lot of times, if it's not that, say it's 10 years old or 15 years old, and it's not that bad shape, you may be able to rehab it for X amount of dollars to save 10 years, but you may not.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
Oh, thanks. Pete, how are you?
Good.
Hey, listen, the question I've got for you, and you hit on earlier, the big thing here in Bethel for both fire departments is getting recruitment of volunteers. You have any thoughts how we can expand upon it? Because, you know, no matter where I go, you go through Danbury or even go through any of the surrounding towns, you see that sign, volunteers needed. And needless to say, if we were to go to a full-time fire department, the budget would be in excess of probably or equal to what we're doing right now for the police department. Any thoughts?
No question about it. Right now, we're bringing people in from Danbury, volunteers from Danbury. We're bringing medical people from Danbury coming in, joining to help us. You know.
Yeah.
What is the incentive? Is there incentive? Like tax abatement does help, but that's for Bethel residents. But we're bringing people in from Danbury, from Newtown and stuff like that. It's very difficult today. You have to take what we're having, like we're getting a lot of people from New York now moving into Bethel. Now's the time to go have a campaign, have people come down, have an open house, bring them in, bring their children in, talk to them. If they're juniors, start as a junior league fire department to help build them up and bring them up. That would help. Like we have young kids in school now to come. They're junior firefighters. They want to be junior. And we can get, well, at least we got them through high school. Maybe we got them while they're going to college, you know what I'm saying? In the summertime. So that does help.
Oh, good. Hey, the other last question I got for you, it goes towards Rich's earlier question about trucks, the trucks in general. Just like maintaining a car, I understand number of hours and all of that. If you have, say, I'm always of the opinion that, if you have 10 years on a truck, is there something that we should do to extend the life of it by preventative maintenance? If you see that, I'll use this as an example, the pump, it's not out of sync, but you can anticipate it's will be out of sync. Let's fix it now when it's cheaper and we'll extend the life of the truck. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, what they do every year they're pump tested by a certified pump company. They'll pump test them to make sure the pump does meet specifications. The ladders are tested to meet specifications. That's done every year. Your maintenance record as far as oil changes and stuff like that, you got to keep track of all your maintenance on your vehicles.
That's a good point, because I think with the last issue we had with the ladder truck, it was sort of a maintenance issue here. And I think honestly that and this the fire commissioners really have got to be, that's going to be one of their top notch things to keep a record of each particular piece of equipment. You agree?
Well, I'm with you 100%. When I was a chief, we had lieutenants on every vehicle, and we had groups of men on every vehicle. They were maintained. There was a sheet every week. They were checked. They went out, and once a year for pump tests. They were out every time they went out. They were washed. They were hosed down. The oil was changed. We had a maintenance record on every vehicle. We knew where it was, when it was, how many miles we put on it, how many hours we had on it. It was told every week when the lieutenants went through, they checked it, they wrote it all down. That's how you keep track of what's going on with these. You're talking $500,000, $600,000, $500,000 for a pumper today. I mean, that's a lot of money, and you got to maintain them. I mean,
right.
Right.
Listen, thank you.
Paul, it starts from the top, and when it works down. But with the commission, I think they can take an overview of all the pumpers, everything that we have, the ages that you have, the records that you have, is looking at the maintenance on them and the pump test on them, that test on them, and then you can document when you have to change them, when you don't have to change them.
Thank you. Great.
All right. Thank you very much, Pete.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Next, I'd like to move to Fred Ingram. Fred.
How you doing, Matt?
Thank you for joining us tonight. So we'll take it from the top. Give us a little bit about your background and what you would like to contribute as a fire commissioner.
All right, sure. Yeah, I've been a resident of the town of Bethel for 50 years. I moved here as a young child. I went through all the Bethel schools, and my children have gone through all the Bethel schools. But I was a member of the Bethel Fire Department since 1987. I served as chief of the department for 8 years. During my time with the fire department, I served on the EMS commission during the Bob Burke administration. And that was when we implemented paid EMS staffing and EMS billing. Prior to that, it was 100% volunteer staffing, and we didn't do any billing. That was a big deal that we took care of right away in my first year as chief. I've served on multiple apparatus committee, replacement committees during my time in the department. I think 7 different pieces of apparatus I served on the replacement committees. I also most recently served on the town's apparatus committee to look at the issue with the town's ladder truck, and we resolved that. For the last 4 years, I really have not been active in the fire department. I am I'm what the department classifies as a veteran member. Originally my intention was to retire, but they had a clause in the company bylaws that didn't allow retired members to make calls. And I thought, I might kind of still want to make a call if there was, a huge fire in town and my services could be used. So they have a veteran membership status, which basically eliminates any obligations I have to the department, but allows me to still make calls as long as I maintain my certifications and my training. So while I'm not really that active, I kind of, I have this veteran status, and the last few months since there's been an administration change in the department, I've been going down, and I drive the apparatus occasionally to some of the bigger calls, if you will. I'm not going out on all the the automatic alarms and stuff of that nature. But if it's a real fire or something and they need some extra manpower, I've been showing up and doing some driving for them. I've also been kind of a sounding board for the new chief, just kind of giving him a little bit of advice to kind of get his feet wet. He hadn't been in an officer's position himself in the last few years. And he kind of got just put into the position this year, and was just looking for a little bit of direction to kind of get the department back on track. They kind of feel like they came off the rails a little bit the last few years. So just kind of been a sounding board for him.
Okay, thanks. What qualities would you look for in a commissioner? What makes a good commissioner?
I think as a commissioner, the biggest thing for me is really just weighing what is in the best interest of the taxpayer. How are they going to get their best bang for the buck, and also get the best fire protection that they can, or public service protection that they can? I understand the difference, between being the fire chief and coming in with this giant wish list of, everything we have to be a top-notch fire department and have all the best equipment. But I also, as a taxpayer, realize that you can buy a $10 axe and it can be just as good as a $15 axe. To put it in simple terms. So personally, my agenda would be to get the best bang for the buck for the taxpayer, while making sure the fire departments have the best equipment to do their job.
What would you say are the top issues affecting facing our two departments these days over the next few years?
Clearly, I think the rest of the candidates you spoke to already have mentioned it is manpower and retention, retaining the manpower that we do get. Right now, the manpower is just very limited, especially during the daytime. I mean, back when I first joined the department, we had a lot of stay-at-home moms, that could come out and they cover ambulance calls for us. We even had a lot of stay-at-home moms that became certified firefighters. And that's just not the case anymore. There really is not such a thing as stay-at-home moms anymore that have the time to do the volunteer service like they did in the past. We had a lot of younger members, like myself. I mean, I was 19 years old when I joined the department, and there was a whole group of us that we all lived, like within a half a block of the fire department, and we worked nights. We were available during the daytime. They don't have that anymore. So the daytime is really, really tough, and the turnover seems to be really high. That's a problem with the retention, and because of the turnover, we're starting to see a lack of qualified members to hold officer positions, leadership positions within the department. Chief Valenti spoke to the fact when he was chief. We used to have a lieutenant on every piece of apparatus. If we tried to have a lieutenant on every piece of apparatus, downtown now, we wouldn't be able to fill the positions. There's just not enough qualified members to fill those positions. So I think we need to come up with a plan to not only attract new members, but to retain new members.
Well, that kind of leads directly into the next question. Where do you see the two departments and the commission and evolving over the next couple of years? So that sounds to me like that's going to be the major challenge, right?
Yeah, I mean, Bethel is just growing by leaps and bounds. I moved here in early 1971, and I think there was 8,000 people in town when I first moved here, and we're up over 20,000 people now. So, I mean, it's well doubled in size since I moved here, and the fire departments are still the same size. The fire departments haven't changed in size. They still have the same amount of apparatus, and they have less people operating in the two departments. So that's problematic. I see some type of combination happening within the two departments, whether it be, and I don't know how soon it's going to happen, but I think, you know, something's going to happen with EMS. I think, you know, the ambulance service, you know, there's a lot of duplication in the ambulance service with the, you know, the paid staffing. You know, they're hiring, you know, double staff, you know, 2 EMTs in Stony Hill and 2 EMTs downtown are being hired, plus a paramedic. You know, if there was some type of consolidation of the service, you might get away with, you know, reducing some of that staff. And, you know, that could be, the cost of EMS could be borne by just through revenue recovery rather than some of the taxpayer dollars that are going out now. I know, you know, taxpayer dollars are being expended on the paramedic program right now. And, you know, I think a lot more of that cost could be picked up by the 2 fire departments if there was some combination of the EMS services. And, you know, I think, you know, like I mentioned, you know, we're having a tough time filling leadership positions now. I think, you know, in the distant future, you know, how distant, I don't know. There might be you know, a combination where there's, you know, one paid fire chief for the entire town, and maybe, you know, a deputy chief in each department that reports to a single chief. But I mean, you know, how far down the road that is, I don't know, but it's something worth looking at. And I think it's something that's going to be coming, you know, probably sooner than later.
Thank you. Paul, your questions?
Hi, Fred.
How you doing, Paul?
Good. Listen, Fred, you know, you touched on a subject right here about volunteers. You have any thoughts how we can expand getting recruits here in Bethel? Because, you know, like you said earlier, when you were younger, there was a lot of people around in town working in town, but that doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, you know, we had the pension program in the past, and that's kind of going by the wayside. You know, while, you know, there's long-term members that are vested in the program and will still see some benefit from it. You know, there's no new members being put into the program. So, you know, that might be something we need to look at and revisit again, you know, whether we reinstitute some type of pension program. You know, we have the tax abatement, you know, there's a call requirement for the member to achieve the tax abatement. There's been some changes at the state level as to, I believe it's, you know, members with 25 years of service are eligible to receive the tax abatement on a permanent basis. That's something that hasn't been adopted by the town of Bethel yet. I think that's something that needs to be looked at. And, you know, outside of that, I don't know. I mean, there's, you know, some town services, maybe, you know, you could entice some members with some town services, like, you know, giving them free dump passes or, you know, things like that. You know, you have to look into the legalities of that too. You know, I don't know, you know, all the legalities of giving away, you know, services or such. But certainly I think we need to come up with ways to entice members to, or new prospective members to become members.
Yeah, good. Then, you know, like you said, EMS, where do you see EMS going forward? Because I think, I know I was on the board when we implemented our relationship with Danbury Hospital on the EMS, and you were chief at the time. Where do you see it going forward from here? Should we have our own EMS, full-time paid EMS department, and you know, just do Bethel and not surrounding towns?
Well, recently the Bethel Fire Department had some discussion, you know, in-house, you know, where we were going to go with, you know, EMS. Were we going to try to combine services with the Stony Hill Fire Department to, you know, to combine into one service? And it didn't really go too far at this point. You know, they kind of agreed that they would, you know, combine some of their training and you know, allow each other to ride on each other's ambulances, you know, make calls in each other's districts and such. But right now they kind of wanted to remain separate. I think it's important for the, you know, the fire departments to continue to provide EMS service. I don't think we should be going to a commercial service.
Well, my question is, should we have our own employees rather than contracted?
Rich?
I don't know. It's tough. Yes and no. I would like to, personally, I would like to see one EMS service provided,
Okay.
in the whole town. If that service, it'd be a combination of, both paid employees and volunteers. I never want to exclude volunteers from doing any type of volunteerism. We got people that want to volunteer to make ambulance calls. That's terrific. I mean, God bless them.
No.
All the more power to them. But yeah, I mean, there's no way with the call volume we have in this town that we can cover 100% of the calls with volunteers anymore. We have to hire people, whether it's, contracting, an outside service to provide the staffing or to hire our own people. That's something that would have to be discussed. I think contracting outside services at this point in time is the way to go. Right now, we're contracting 3 different outside sources to do it. Stony Hill has one provider for their BLS services. But the fire department has one provider for their BLS services, and the town of Bethel has yet another provider to provide the paramedic. Right? There's probably some cost savings there. If we went to one provider versus 3 different ones.
Good point. Good point. Okay, that's my only questions, Fred. Listen, thank you.
Thank you.
Rich?
Yeah, hi, Fred.
Hey, how you doing, Rich?
Thanks for serving on the truck committee and getting that ladder truck back on the road.
That was my pleasure.
You mentioned about retention of the people, the volunteers down there. Is it something they get bored, they move to out of town, or they go to another fire department? What's part of the issue there?
It's a combination of things. I think the last administration in the Bethel Fire Department was kind of rough. That didn't do anything to help retention. And, Bethel's not all that busy of a town, fire-wise. We don't have a lot of fires. There's not a fire every day to spark everybody's interest. Not everybody gets excited to go on the automatic alarm and reset, the alarm and go home. They want to go when they want to see smoke and fire. Keep them excited. So, that's part of it. I don't know. The Bethel Fire Department, they used to have a lot of parties. They used to have a lot, Halloween parties and St. Patrick's Day parties, and all of that seems to have gone by the wayside. So a lot of the camaraderie seems to has disappeared.
You think that's the times, or is it the times, or is it?
I'm not really sure. I think it's something that needs to be looked at. Definitely need to improve the camaraderie, between members, make them want to come down to the firehouse and hang out.
Right. That's a good point. All right, I'm going to go back to my other 3 questions. Capital expenditures for, laying out something for 5 or 10 years. Every year at budget time, each department comes in and, we need this or we need that. It'd be great for the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to have an idea of, your upcoming expenses. So that's one thing we're looking for the Fire Commission to help us with, do a capital plan. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very important. And I think I might have been Chief Doe that touched on it. A lot of these big ticket items, they have specific times when they need to be replaced. The air bottles, they have to be replaced at certain date intervals, and when those dates are, so you can plan long term. When those replacement dates are going to come up, and the costs that are going to be involved. Same thing with turnout gear. There's specific replacement dates on those, and I know in the past there's been a whole bunch of different times that we've tried to set up some type of apparatus replacement plan, and each time it's it seems to have gone by the wayside. But we really need to come up with an apparatus replacement plan for the town and really stick to it, because, coming to the town and, 1 year and saying, well, you know what, we need $1.5 million to replace a ladder truck. It's just not practical. I mean, you gotta know that you're gonna need that $1.5 million years in advance. And, you gotta start putting that money away years in advance.
Okay.
Just to throw an apple out there, if you put $75,000 away every year, you can replace a truck, every couple of years.
Well, that's something we have to get through to the Board of Finance. It's hard dealing with them sometimes. My other question is about the older trucks, the rehabbing of an older truck, if it's still roadworthy.
Yeah, you have to look at each individual truck on an individual basis. So some of the trucks are used a lot harder than others. I mean, your frontline engine, after 20 years, that truck could be beat and require $300,000 worth of work to be brought back up to standards. Is it really worth spending $300,000 to bring that truck up to the current standards to get another 5 or 10 years out of it, when you could spend $400,000 or $500,000 to get a new truck? Some of the lesser used vehicles, after 20 years, do they just need a little bit of updating, new light package and light updating, it might be worthwhile refurbing those. So each truck you would have to look at on an individual basis. I really think.
Yeah, I think more people looking at the issues of things like that will help identify things better. That is it worth it or is not worth it?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then the other question is about the Chevy and Cadillac equipment. And I've heard the other chiefs talk about it. It's a lot of it is the packages that they put on it. But I hope the commission has the pulse of the fire departments that's requesting the equipment, and the townspeople who have to pay for the equipment. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. I think there is a difference between a Chevy and a Cadillac. There's no doubt about it. I think the one thing that is key, in my opinion, is you look at the Stony Hill Fire Department. I mean, almost all of their apparatus is made by one manufacturer. And you look at the Bethel Fire Department, and they have apparatus from every piece of apparatus down there is from a different manufacturer, except for 2 of them. There's 2 Suffens, and everything else is from a different manufacturer. And I think that becomes burdensome from a maintenance standpoint, and from a training standpoint for members. I think there's something to be gained by having apparatus from the same manufacturer. I think that's something Stony Hill Fire Department has really done right. It was something that I tried to achieve while I was chief, but they seem to have gone in a different direction with the last piece of apparatus they purchased. But I think that there's definitely something to be gained by having the same apparatus, same apparatus manufacturer, especially from a training and a maintenance standpoint.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. We're going to try to pick up the pace here a little bit, because a lot of good discussion here, though. I really appreciate that. One thing I'd like our candidates to know, I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about EMS, and just so you know, the EMS function is part of both departments, but this particular, and it's important that we look at that in the future, but just so you know, you're not responsible for EMS at the start of this commission. There is an EMS commission that handles that too. So just to keep that in the back of your mind. So thanks again, Fred. And want to move on to John. John, you're going to forgive me. Can you pronounce your name for me so I don't mangle it? Oh, you're muted, John.
You're muted.
Sorry, I had to pull that off.
There you go.
I've been on way too many Zoom meetings lately. So a little bit about my background very fast. I sent something over to Matt. So I've been a lifetime member of the town of Bethel. My family grew up here. I don't have the depth of experience that Fred and Pete and the other people do. But I do have as a background. I currently work in MBA in finance from the University of Connecticut. But I do understand budgeting, planning, long-range planning. Currently, I'm still employed by a company and I report directly to the CEO. We have 600 employees. So I'm familiar with budgeting, planning, finances, and listening to everybody, which we do. I did review the entire capital plan, which the town has put together. I can see all the numbers that are already on here out to 2028. I see the two piece of apparatus, 1.3 million. The other expenditures, I see something for the Clark Industrial Park for training. So I don't have either Fred's background, which is pretty in-depth, Pete and the other people. What I do have is a strong background in capital budgeting, planning, financing, et cetera. What I see from looking at this, not at the level that the granular letter that those people are at, is I think the biggest challenge is this situation of retaining talent and volunteers, because the bigger cost is going to be in the future for Bethel. You cannot, you're in a volunteer. And I'm staggered as a long-term resident that we still have a volunteer fire department. It's a credit to the town and to the people, but retaining people, keep the volunteers there, keeping them happy, I see it as a larger challenge for the future. So it's not capital budgeting. This I understand, the records keeping critical and so forth, but where does the department go in the future? Then as an outsider looking at it very quickly, I see Stony Hill, which is a pretty progressive. They're on Instagram. They have a great website. All their stats are sitting up there. I looked at the stats for the entire year, so forth. And I see the one in the center of town that seems like a totally different vibe and situation. And they talked about, are they combined? So, I mean, I don't know how they coordinate together and work together. So I guess my opinion is that looking at it, if this is a planning situation, it's a recruitment and training situation, and understanding that we're reporting directly to the selectmen, it's the capital budget and protecting the taxes and what's done for the town of Bethel. But I wouldn't underestimate the need for some type of transition in the future as to where the two departments are going, how they work together, and basically how this is coordinated with all the capital expenses. So I see things. One is capital expenses, which you have a plan, and I understand that clearly, but secondarily, where's the department going for the future? It's existed well with volunteers, but right now, getting volunteers in, because the expense of the employees in the future and employing some type of paid department or chief is, I think, a really big expense once that comes about. But the transition, I think you're in a transition right now. So again, my background's finance, long-term Bethel resident. I do understand budgeting. I work with that now with the CEO of our current company. And I do a lot of that. So, and what questions the commission has for me.
Great. Well, what personal qualities do you think make for a good commissioner?
I think you have to be a really good listener, because I think that I'm listening to all these people talk. I think you have to listen very well. One, you have to understand, the needs of the town of Bethel. Two, you have to be a really good planner, because there's going to be a lot of transition in the future. Bethel is growing like crazy. There's a real density to downtown. I hear all the stories about how do you get volunteers, how do you respond quickly. I heard stories about EMS. So it's to approach it with an open attitude, listen to see what could be done, understanding the needs of the town of Bethel and planning for the future. So it's planning, it's capital budgeting, but it's also this issue about where is the departments going? How are the two working together? Stony Hill, as well as the fire department. I mean, Chris McCollum is a friend of mine. I know people in the town of Bethel, but I think, the bigger issues is where's the department going for the future?
Right. Actually, you in your opening comments, you kind of covered all the questions I had.
Yep.
Because you talked about the future, the future of the department, capital planning, I'll give you also credit. You were the first one to raise the specter of a possibility at some point in the future of a paid department. So I don't have any further questions on that score. I'm going to turn it over to Rich Straiton. Rich, do you have any questions for John? Oh, Rich, you're muted.
The dog was whining next to me. I didn't want the dog on Zoom.
Thanks, Rich.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Thank you for applying for this. The question is, and you spoke to part of it, the capital expenditures of the departments, to keep the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance aware of upcoming expenses. And some of it is our fault because we plan it or we put it in a slot and it keeps getting moved back and back and back. So we need somebody to help push us to keep on that track.
Right.
It's hard for the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, to keep a budget viable for the taxpayers. So a lot of things get pushed back. Oh, we'll push that back another year, and before we know it, it's 5 years. So we need, hopefully the commission is going to help us keep on track with a capital improvement plans for the departments for their needs.
No, you guys, I mean, I stared at the whole plan. You've got it planned out and I can see all the numbers. I'm looking at them now in front of me with a lot of items here, but I know that there's always the challenge of the town of Bethel, which how much money do you have? Where's the expense come from, et cetera. So it's one area that I think I have a strength in.
Yeah.
The long range planning, capital budgeting, I'm looking at this, but I wouldn't underestimate the planning for the future as part of this commission. Is part of it's like the two departments, how do they work together? The EMS stories and so forth, and kind of have an objective opinion towards that for the best interest of the town, I think is critical.
Okay. All right. You don't have the background in the trucks, so, I'm not going to ask you that question, but I'm sure that you are a member that you'll ask those questions, what's the best for the town and in the different types of trucks and the age of the trucks, if they're reversible, to keep, possibly any future expense down a bit for the, if the fire department can refurbish a truck for, a reasonable cost. And I understand, what the other chiefs have said, sometimes it gets too costly to refurbish the truck. You might as well buy a new one. And we all do that in our personal lives. We're not going to spend money on an old clunker if it's not worth it fixing it. So,
no, I can clearly see on the long range capital, two engines at 1.3 million. In the plan, I can also see some of the other dollars for refurbishing some of the other ones. And the company I'm with, we own manufacturing plants. I'm involved with the CEO on that. And a lot of the planning we do is like, are we going to fix it or are we going to basically buy a new one? So I deal with those issues from our own company's capital point of view. And I mentioned we're about $1 billion corporation with 600 employees, 3 manufacturing plants. So those decisions to either repair it, or buy new is something I deal with on a pretty regular basis.
okay, great. Well, thank you.
Thanks you.
Thank you very much. Paul?
Oh, hi, John. How are you?
Hi, Paul.
Good. Hey, listen, John, similar type background. I was in business planning and long-term development business.
Right.
Question for you, a long-term planning, I don't know what your definition of long-term planning, especially when it deals with the fire department and 3 years, with capital equipment and small equipment, okay?
Mhm.
But how often do you think plans should be reviewed? Because I've had discussions with product managers and marketing managers, updating plans. How often do you think relative to this, it's a very small situation versus industry in a fire department?
To answer that question, from what I'm looking at, you guys did an excellent job on the capital plan and the numbers, but it's not that complicated. It couldn't be reviewed annually. I think there's enough going in here because you got the tax situation, the town with the tax on taxes. You're looking at, again, the make or buy decision or the repair or buy decision. And those needs are going to change pretty much annually. There's not a lot here that couldn't be looked at annually, is the point I'm making. And for planning point of view, I think it needs to be done that often. Did I
Okay.
answer the question?
No, I understand that because, like I said, sometimes, I was of the opinion, sometimes when it comes to like the smaller items, it's like every 6 months, maybe they should be reviewed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at a minimum annually. There's not that much equipment on here.
Right.
Accessories. I mean, I see expenses for the air packs and things like that, but truly the rest of it, and particularly since, I mean, I'm conscious of the politics of budgets, the town meetings and things like that, and the pressure everybody here is under for that. And I think that having an objective opinion at looking at is the critical thing that you guys do. So it's part of the normal planning process. And I would say annually to look at this. If there's something really that happens, major expense and comes out of the blue, it's something that's different. But the rest of it should be, again, it's not like a manufacturing plant. We have hundreds of pieces of equipment. I mean, you have trucks, and I'm not trying to minimize the information from the other guys, but I think that it's a pretty straightforward thing.
Thank you. Really.
You're welcome.
I understand that. Listen, other than that, thank you for coming out tonight and volunteering your expertise to us.
Thank you. And compliments to the town on first having a volunteer department. Again, I'm amazed it's still here after all the years and that many volunteers, but I think that's one of the critical issues too, is what happens to that, not only the equipment, but also the people. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Matt.
Next, I would like to call on Jake. Jake, help me out with your name. I don't want to mispronounce it.
Barriere.
Barriere. Okay, easier than I thought.
Yep.
So Jake, well, take it from the top. Give us a little thumbnail sketch of your elevator speech and why you want to join the commission.
Sure. So my name is Jake Barriere. I grew up here in town since birth. I was a member of the Stony Hill Fire Department from 2011 to the beginning of this past year. Second year in business of a landscaping company here in town that's been taken off, fortunately, pretty good. And I currently work at the Bethel Highway Department full time. So doing both of those jobs takes up a lot of my time. So I wasn't able to give as much time as I really wanted to the department. So beginning of this year, I went honorary, and I live right downtown here. I'm married. We're getting ready to start a family this year. And I think that just being a part of this commission, it would give me a way to give back to the community and still help out with the fire service here in town.
What does that mean to be an honorary member?
As far as I was told, is basically they take all my gear, everything is taken away from me. But at any point, if I wanted to go back, I'm in good standings. I can go back, no questions asked, type thing.
Okay. What qualities make for a good commissioner in your mind?
Well, I think the first quality is listening to multiple opinions on different stances, and keeping an open mind on all the situations that are brought to you.
What, based on your experience, what would you say the top issues affecting our two departments are today?
Well, I mean, obviously, the other guys have hit most of the main keys. I would definitely say that recruitment is going to be number one. The recruitment is definitely something that needs to be addressed and looked at and further.
Yeah, I know it's kind of hard we're all on the same call together, isn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you feel like you got to come up with something new, but yeah, if that's
yeah, I mean, everyone's kind of hitting on all the questions that all my answers, but.
And what do you see? How do you see the commission and the relationship between the commission and the two fire departments evolving in the next few years?
I mean, I think the commission can bring the fire departments even closer together than they already are. I know with the new administration downtown, and just hearing from people in town that both departments are starting to work together a lot more. which is only going to help, both departments when it comes to training together more and even boosting morale within the both departments.
Yeah. One last question for me. Seeing as how you were a relatively new member, you said you joined in 2011, right?
2011, yep.
So what do you have, just briefly, any ideas about recruitment? Like what attracted you to the fire department?
Well, I grew up next to the late past Chief B-Lot. So, I always hung out next to Jim, and he kind of got me into the department. My uncles were in the Stony Hill Fire Department for many years. I guess I kind of just one day got an itch to go try it out. And I joined when I was in high school. And honestly, back then, there was a lot younger crowd, at least I could probably say, that hung out down there. And, we would just hang out down there, and it would just be our thing to do, like after school. And I don't really see that much more. You drive by the fire department, it's a ghost town usually, So I think as far as that is gonna have to try and work on a recruitment plan for sure.
Yeah. Okay, Paul, you got questions?
Sure. Hey, Jake, thanks for coming out tonight.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Fine, thank you. Listen, you hit on a subject here that's common to the entire cause here tonight, recruitment. How would you go out about saying recruiting more people or implementing a program? What are some of your thoughts, since you're one of the younger guys?
Yeah, well, I think maybe getting out. I know it's a lot, it's more to put on the volunteers, but maybe get out door to door and throw on a Stony Hill, a Bethel Fire Department shirt and knock on doors and just explain what we're doing and how the departments are operating, because we got a lot of new residents here in town that probably don't even know, that I've talked to a lot of people that they think that this is a paid department. They see the fire trucks going down the road every day and they wouldn't know the difference, So I think it's getting the information out to the public a little bit more. I know, somebody said with Stony Hill's been doing a lot of like Facebook and putting a lot of videos up and posting their calls, and I think that gets the public, more involved.
Okay, all right. Let me just ask you a sort of a loaded question here then. What do you think was one of the biggest shortcomings found in either department or throughout the town for fire?
As in recruitment or?
No, in general.
It's going to be the retention, is giving an incentive for members to stick around.
Okay.
And I know when I joined.
You have any thoughts what these incentives might be? I know we mentioned here things like there's a tax type thing for.
The tax abatement. The tax abatement, giving more incentives, as even having company picnics and hanging out. I think Fred touched on it. Is years ago I remember the Halloween party down at as a kid going to the Halloween party at Stony Hill. None of that's all kind of gone away. I think bringing some of that stuff back and even having open houses, even if it's once a year, an open house at each fire department and let the kids come down and squirt some water. I mean, that just gets younger kids more thinking about it when they come of age.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Yeah.
Rich?
Yeah. Hi, Jake. Thank you for putting your name on the list here.
No problem.
You probably heard some of my same questions I've been asking the other people about the retention of the older vehicles and just what your opinion on those, and also on the trucks for the Cadillac versus the Chevy.
Yeah. Refurbing, I think it is definitely something that can be looked into. Maybe if it's like, say example, a 2010 at where we're currently at, if they're thinking about replacing in the next couple of years and we can put, say 50,000 into it just to bring it up to par to get another 10, 12 years out of it. that's realistic, you know. But if that truck's going to need a whole new pump, or the mileage is up too high, it's probably going to be, you know, if we're going to be putting 250,000 into it, it's probably not the greatest idea, you know. And then as far as the Chevy, Ford, Cadillac thing, it's going to be what you pay for is what you get. And I know Stony Hill runs a lot, you know, all Pierce for their fire apparatus, which has always been a really reputable fire apparatus company. I would say just looking at the needs and the wants when the time comes, and see if we can get away with something that's, you know, if it's $100,000 just because we're going to put a couple, you know, put chrome on it, you know, maybe we can save, you know, and put, you know, steel, you know, in that way.
I froze up there.
Oh, you froze up there. Yeah.
And then the last question is about the, you know, as I mentioned before, you know, everybody's on, so they hear the same questions. You know, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance has a difficult time at budget time. So the planning, long-term planning is crucial for the boards to, you know, try to plan ahead.
Yeah.
And we try to convince the Board of Finance or putting money away for these trucks in the future, but hopefully with the Fire Commission's support and things, that we can sway them a little bit more to try to start putting money away each year for these big expenditures, so it doesn't hit all at one time.
Yeah.
So that's something that you know, we wanted to see happen with this Board of Commissioners, to lay out a good capital plan for us for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, at first it's going to be a big burden at first. The commission, I think, is going to have to go in and you know, literally go item by item, air pack by air pack, write down dates and have everything logged, so that we can figure out a 10-year plan. And so each year, it's almost like, you know, come budget time, you know, the finance board will already know what's coming to them, you know, unless there's a major breakdown or something. They should pretty much have a ballpark figure of what they're going to be getting into, you know.
Right. All right. Well, thank you, Jake.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Yep. Thank you.
And I want to pause for a second, just thank everybody for your patience. I know it's kind of a long night, so I really appreciate that you're hanging in there. So next, I'd like to call Peter Schenkman. Peter, I think you're.
I'm here.
There you are. You're up in the upper left-hand corner. So, Peter, give us your elevator speech, what your background is, and why you'd like to join.
Okay, well, I'll start off by saying I'm not a lifelong Bethel resident. I've only lived here 8 years. I'm not a former firefighter, but I've spent a good part of my life, specifically 4 years, organizing the largest fire department in the world, or at least the US, and helping them get what everyone on this call has asked for: accountability. And we helped rebuild them after 9/11. I was hired by New York City to create fleet accountability. New York City, if you can believe, with 26,000 pieces of equipment, was running on Excel spreadsheets and pieces of paper, very similar to the way the town runs. As far as the big issues, yes, recruitment's always an issue. I think if we want to attract younger folks, we've got to get out on social media. I'm at a loss to understand why Stony Hill has an amazing website and social media and Bethel doesn't. I do see across New York State, my brother is a lieutenant volley and a fire police officer in New York State. He experiences a lot of these same issues with 2 houses in the same town. A homogeneous fleet is an economical fleet. Stony Hill is on the right path, whether they're considered Cadillacs or not. They know their vehicles, they're all the same, and they will have similar life cycles. I approach this from a technical standpoint and a financial budgetary standpoint. The day you buy a piece of apparatus is the day you know when you're getting rid of that piece of apparatus. The idea of keeping older equipment to keep refurbishing it to save money, it's kind of antiquated. And what we've proven over time across all types of emergency equipment is there are primary, secondary, tertiary, and even quaternary markets for these vehicles. If the vehicle life is set at 22 years, for example, we know what we're going to get for that vehicle. And we can sell it on the secondary, tertiary, or even quaternary market if we maintain it well. We also can't make educated decisions about purchasing apparatus if we don't have data. And I have a little experience with the Bethel town fleet, and data is sorely lacking. So we can't make educated decisions without data. And it's the most important thing, setting up a preventive maintenance program in the required OSHA, National Fire Prevention inspections. All of these are administrative tasks that we're asking volunteers to do, but it ensures that the largest investment in rolling stock in the town is worth something rather than scrap metal at the end. I'm going to address the questions before they're even asked. The Cadillac, Pierce Arrow, E1, Spartan conversation, any vehicle, and I learned this firsthand when all of a sudden New York City bought a fleet of Kenworth garbage trucks and DOT trucks. But it was spec'd right, and it turned out it was the cheapest way. So sometimes you get lucky, but you have to take into account the needs and the operational needs and wants of the companies before you can attempt to spec it. A base vehicle is a base vehicle. It is all of the add-ons that drive the price up from 1.4 to 1.7. And every one of those, as the other chief said, indicated, have a known life cycle. So if the turnout gear, hearse tools, oxygen tanks have definitive life cycles, so does the most important and expensive piece of equipment that sits there. So what I was involved in was procurement, teaching agencies how to procure equipment, long scale, 10-year, 15-year. Although it's not applicable, the fire department of New York is 11 years minus 1 day. That's the life cycle of the vehicle. And those vehicles have tertiary lives. You'll see FDNY vehicles all over the country. I've even seen them down in the Caribbean. So there has to be a sale of the vehicle, and it's just not as simple as, hey, we need a truck in 3 years. Well, what we used to tell, because I worked for Citywide Administrative Services, prove it. Oh, you don't have the data to prove all of your maintenance records. Then how do we know what it really costs? So you have to understand the vehicle and the costs associated with it and potential accidents and equipment like that. And that's what I offer to the commission. In addition to the fire department, I've been responsible for the safety and emissions of all for-hire vehicles in New York City, all 50,000 of them. I set up a very simple inspection program. At the time, New York City taxis were the safest in the country. And it's just applying the same thing as technology is what the town needs, and accountability. And it helps all the shareholders, the selectmen or the town government, the public, and the fire companies.
Thank you. Rich, you got questions? Where'd you go? There you are. You're muted.
I also think agree with the last gentleman. The open houses are a great thing. And I think the chiefs and firefighters go into the schools. I mean, when we went to school, we had show and tell where, you know, cool parents came in and talked about what they did.
Yeah.
And every kid wants to be a firefighter when they're kids. So we've just got to keep instilling it. And if the fire department becomes, you know, everyone, even if, you know, it becomes a requirement, wear your gear to Food Truck Fridays and stuff like that, they're part, and they see their neighbors, and it's part of the town.
And I'm on now. So Peter, thank you for applying your expertise in this commission. You really answered a lot of my questions already. So there's, you know, you talked about the trucks, you talked about the long-term expenditure plans. So, you know, I think you covered all my questions.
The goal is to flatten the budgetary curve.
Yeah.
Predictable as far as that 1983 pickup truck that sits over by the dump.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Paul, you have questions?
Yeah, Peter, thank you for coming out tonight and giving your expertise here. Let me just throw you one little question right here. You know, one of the big things is its maintenance, okay? And you've been involved in the purchase of a lot of different vehicles. Have you ever negotiated maintenance contracts either directly with the manufacturer such that there might be a bargain for the town of Bethel or
Yes.
for the municipality that you've been representing?
So New York City with its 52 agencies, 52 repair facilities, if you can believe that. I happen to manage the outsourced fleet without in-house management. So we used, it was PHH Arville at the time. And if you go back in time, it was the old GE Capital. One of the things that the fire department and the police department do is there are known items for every vehicle that will fail. And they, for example, the number one thing that breaks on fire trucks in New York is doors. So they worked out a way as part of the capital purchase to bring in an extra set of doors so they wouldn't have to expense it later. They also buy extended warranties.
Do you find that economical?
Yes. It all depends on, so I'm kind of not fully understanding who does all of the maintenance on these vehicles. I know some of it's outsourced and some of it's done in-house. In a lot of volleys.
Most of it's contracted.
Right, okay.
Since we have two houses, we have two different contractors.
That's something.
I understand, you know, I fully understand, you know.
I'll go with John and I'll question and look forward to the day that potentially everything's consolidated, saving money.
Yeah. The other thing that I just want to ask you, you know, how do you get volunteers to do these inventories? What's your thoughts, or how would you do this to keep the budgets or knowing what you need your budgets in advance to keep inventories? What is your secret?
We're talking equipment wise or
there's not that much, you know, there's not in terms of equipment, the capital equipment, we know there's trucks, but you know, all the other stuff.
Such as, for example,
Bottles, example, or even take the
way we approached, I implemented a very simple software solution in New York City. I've implemented it a couple of other places. You take the vehicle as the main unit, and then you have accessories. So the Hearst tools, any generator that's on the vehicle, chainsaws, even ladders, everything that has to be maintained is kept in this asset management system. And it generates a checklist where, you know, if it's a weekly inspection of the ladders, check, 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 boom, enter. could all be done with barcodes. It's very simple work because you don't want to ask a union employee to do anything that they out of title, not to mention a volunteer. So I do have experience with that. A quick antidote, New York City went to scanning the hands for time management, and everybody in the world protested, wouldn't use it. Unions got involved. And so you want to make it simple. But I think every firefighter, volley or paid, has a vested interest in the safety of the equipment and the apparatus. And I've seen them point out to the technicians what's wrong with the vehicles when they pull in. So it's an ownership, and I don't know a firefighter who doesn't take pride in the apparatus and goes that extra walk around.
That I will say, because I've seen some trucks that we've sold, and I says, what's wrong with it? It looks too good. Which brings me my last question is, you said essentially that when you buy a capital piece of equipment like a truck, you know what it's going to be worth at the end, okay, of its life.
Yep. Sorry to interrupt you, but if you buy it from certain companies like the Rev Group, I know it's not the most favored truck out there, but they do have buyback programs because they want that secondary sale. They would love nothing more than to sell the vehicle 3 times. So you can get a 10-year, 20-year buyback. You could negotiate that.
Really? Okay. That's interesting. Thank you. Hey, Peter, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Really appreciate it. So last but not least, by any means, Doug, thank you so much for hanging in here with us. I know it's been a long night for you, but welcome. Thank you very much for volunteering. And so we're ready for your elevator speech and your background and why you want to join this wonderful commission.
All right. I'm a 29-year resident. Came here from Ridgefield, planned to be here for 5 years and never left. Rich Thode and I grew up in Ridgefield together and cut our teeth in the fire department in Ridgefield. He obviously went a different path. I went towards business and he went towards fire service. I have 25 years experience across 3 departments, actually, 22 in Ridgefield, and then some Rutgers University Fire Department and the town I lived in off campus in New Jersey. I have a master's degree in engineering management, a bachelor's degree in engineering, and fire officer 1, fire instructor, firefighter 2. I was 4 years as chief of the Ridgefield Fire Department, which is a combination department. So we had a career staff in the same building. So I'm used to being involved in 2 different ships at the same time. And I think the commission type function in Bethel is a great function, right? It could be, if executed properly, could be the glue that holds everything together, right? It becomes the mouthpiece for the fire departments to the town planning committees and vice versa. Thereby helping everybody out, right? The commission kind of sits in the middle and helps everyone. And I think the part of the budgeting process, the biggest part of that to me is no surprises, right? We have a variety of different trucks in town. Obviously, we've talked about it. The ladder truck's the most expensive truck. Yeah. Can you be judicious and move the needle from 1.5 million to 1.3? Yeah, but you're still not going to get a ladder truck for $500,000, right? So it's you got a plan. It's going to happen. You're going to have to buy that truck. And I think saying a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, when you're talking about 20-year replacements, I think you need to push that out 20 years. You need to have that rolling in front of you for 20 years. And maybe it's not locked in for years 10 through 20, but at least it's there and you know what's coming. As far as vehicles, I think I see between the 2 departments a lot of collaboration, but sometimes things seem to be done in a vacuum where there is duplicity. There's things that's been duplicated. And maybe, having a commission as a sounding board and bringing everyone together to collaborate can help, ease some of that and maybe dual purpose certain things, you know, maybe it's not a tanker, maybe it's a pumper tanker, and different things like that. Maybe it's a rescue pumper, different things that you can get more bang for your buck out of pieces of equipment. I think on the recruitment side of things, obviously that's a struggle every department has. I caught the bug. I got the bug when I was young. You know, I wanted to join as soon as I could, and it was the coolest thing. I mean, where else are you going to be 18 years old and driving around in someone's $500,000 car? Nowhere else. So, you know, and you catch that bug, a lot of stuff. When you catch it young, you keep it forever. I only moved away from the fire service when my son got to be 4 or 5 years old, and I wanted to spend more time with him. And, you know, I have these dreams of going back to the fire service with him and making it a, you know, a family affair. My father did it. My brother did it. It's just something you take on. So I think there's a recruitment side of things to catch young people and catch them while they're you know, they're full of energy and want to do a lot of stuff and don't mind waxing and cleaning diamond plate. It's great. It's you know, your arms hurt when you're done, but it's a lot of fun. I think there may be an untapped potential. You know, my experience with daytime calls for the fire department is not unlike what's been mentioned before. You know, it's town highway. It's town employees that are there, and they're doing a different job. But if they're allowed to leave, or you can incentivize them in some way to be members of the department, which you can do, they're your employees, right? You could put some sort of pay structure in there that gives them something for joining the fire department and being available for calls during the day. I think that's a big way to try to leverage what you already have in town.
Great. Kind of shifting gears here. What do you think the personal qualities of a good commissioner would be?
I think you got to be a negotiator, right? You got to be able to take different views, listen to what's going on, and try to shoot the gap between the various needs, right? In a situation like this, there's going to be needs of both departments. There's going to be needs of the Board of Finance, needs of the Board of Selectmen, and the commission has a due diligence to represent all of that, right? And sort of sift through the details and figure out the best fit for the curve to get the best solution. I myself, I tend to be pretty frugal. I call my parents cheap, but they say it's frugal. So I'm just going with what they tell me it is. But you know, you got to treat every dollar like it's your own dollar. You know, buying a truck is not going shopping at the store for yourself. It's spending taxpayer money on something really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see the two current departments and the commission evolving over the next few years?
Well, I think I'd love to see it be this camaraderie, and that the departments come to rely on the commission as the mouthpiece, and vice versa. That it becomes and I'm sure there's a lot of animosity or trepidation in the departments about what this is going to be and what it's going to do and how's it going to act. But I think it needs to be a collective working together, teamwork sort of thing, not an adversarial relationship. It's got to be people, common goals. Let's go hit this and let's represent, you know, the commission's going to represent the departments to the town, and everyone's got to put their best foot forward. And everyone's got to be on the same page.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Paul, we'll start with you.
Hi, Doug. How are you?
And yourself?
Good. Fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. Listen, you hit on a couple of things that sort of piqued my interest. Is you said something about incentives, like using the highway department, but what specific incentives have you found perhaps out in Richfield or wherever that makes recruitment easy?
Well, I think it's difficult, right? Because it's something that people want to do. It's the excitement is the incentive, really. I mean, the tax abatement, no one's going to. You're asking someone to do an awful lot of work and invest a lot of time for something that's not that significant. And I don't know if Bethel is still with it, you know, where you had the staggered abatement, but you know, you had to go a couple years before you got a couple $100, and then you had to go a couple more years. I don't think no one's going to make the decision to do it based on that.
Oh.
We would give, in Richfield, we gave the full incentive after the first year. and still it didn't move the needle. But I think, you know, when you catch people and you get a group of people also helps, right? Where you have colleagues, friends who are going to do this together. Then they got arms, you know, they got people to lean on and people to go through the experiences together. When you start going into the training classes and whatnot, you're going with your friends, you're going with people you know. You're training with the people you're going to ultimately work with. So I think there's a lot to be said for not only getting individuals to be interested, but getting groups of individuals to be interested, you know, like-minded people who want to come do this.
Okay. What about standardization of equipment? Because, you know, this has always been an issue with me. One house is just about solid in one piece of equipment. The other house, it's a lot of different pieces of equipment. What's your thoughts?
Standardization definitely saves money. It saves the learning curve, especially when you're bringing the same piece of equipment in. It's just newer, but it's the same piece of equipment and you're using similar specs. You know what? You go to reach for a discharge valve on the pump. It's in the same place every time. You know where it is. So there's a lot to be said for standardization, but I think unfortunately this is, at least in Bethel's situation, it's like turning a ship around, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of rolling stock that's already made that doesn't match. So it's a very, very long process.
What about budgeting? What's some of the biggest issues you've had with budgeting, like over in Ridgefield or wherever you worked?
Surprises. No one likes surprises, especially the people with the spreadsheets, right? And that's where it's real important to get that 5, 10, and 20-year outlook, especially, you know, when you're looking at, you know, we're talking about $1.5 million for a ladder truck.
Right. What about, did you utilize any maintenance contracts through the manufacturer in Ridgefield?
We did not. We had a lot of in-house maintenance, a lot of town highway did a lot of the work. And at one point we were an all Mack department back when Mack made the premier fire trucks in the country. You know, and you talk to those guys at town highway, they know where all the parts are. They know what's going to break. They know what it looks like. And in a lot of cases, they have it sitting on the shelf. But we did a lot of in-house maintenance, and then we sent other stuff out. So more done in-house than out, and no negotiation of extended contracts.
Were you standardized with just Mack there?
Way back we were, yes. Not any longer.
No, okay. That's it. Listen, thank you. Those are my questions.
Hey, Rich?
Yeah, Doug, you brought up a good point. I remember back in the 60s when they were trying to recruit people to join the service. You and your buddies, bring your friends, your schoolmates with you.
Yep.
You know, that's a good idea. I think maybe, you know, we can work on something like that, you know, join and bring a friend.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you touched bases on some of the other things, you know, the capital. I like the capital idea, you know, going out to the 20 years, just like some of the other people said, you know, when you buy the vehicle, you know what it's worth when you get rid of it in 20 years or longer. But what was your experience? Did you refurbish any apparatus?
Some. You know, and again, we talked about, you know, you get what you pay for.
If we're going to spend, you know, $300,000, $400,000 refurbishing a truck, you know, we don't want to do that. But if it's something less expensive to keep the truck rolling for a few more years, I think something like that might be worth it. But what's your opinion?
So I mean, we had some trucks that were not worthy of it, right? They were made by manufacturers that were notorious for, you know, bad bodies. The bodies were put together poorly. You know, a lot of the stuff, the engines and transmissions and all that stuff is off the shelf, right? You know, you select your manufacturer to wrap the chassis and everything else around it. You know, we had a Smeal that was 10 years old and was falling apart. In stark contrast to that, we have a Seagrave, much like the Marauder downtown right now, the newest truck you just bought. That at 20 years went out and got refurbed, and I bet you it's going to be a 35-year truck.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different experiences, right? And different things. The Seagrave is a premier vehicle, right? Everything about it is rock solid. And that's, Peter could speak to that that's why the New York City fleet's Seagrave. They beat the snot out of those trucks and they can still sell them because they're holding up.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for putting your name in on this list here.
Sure.
It's going to be a hard decision.
Good to have too many candidates than not enough.
Yeah. Yes.
There was some great conversation.
To make the membership bigger on it.
Well, great. Thank you very much to all of our candidates. Yeah, we have 11 people, so the Board of Selectmen is going to have to schedule another meeting within the next few days to mull this over and make some really difficult choices, because we obviously have a lot of tremendously talented people who want to serve the town, and I really want to thank you for that. So Doug, thank you. Thank you to all our candidates for your patience tonight. I have really enjoyed this discussion. I think this might be one of the most productive discussions I've had in quite a few years. So appreciate it. Have a great night. And now we're going to move on with the agenda. We've got 2 quick business items, and then Nancy Ryan is going to give us a brief overview of what the building committee has been up to. So I'm going to move on to agenda item number 3, and I'll put a motion on the floor. This is consideration of refunds for overpayment of taxes. And in your packet there, you'll see that there is all right, good night, Kenny. Thanks for being here. I'll put a motion on the floor that we authorize, at the request of Ann Skako, tax collector, refunds for overpayment in the amount of $26,967.11.
I'll second that motion.
All right, second by Paul.
Matt, I don't want to interrupt, but I will. I just want the commission to know that there is one refund on there that's for one of my clients.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So noted. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries. Item number 2, we have a vacancy on the Ethics Commission, and we have a recommendation from the BRTC to fill that vacancy with Mr. Steve Duchel, who is well known to us, has volunteered for a lot of things, has volunteered with the food bank. So I'll put a motion on the floor that we appoint Stephen Duchel to fill the remaining term left by the resignation of Bill Kingston.
Second.
Seconded by Paul. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that carries. And last but not least, Nancy, you are up. Thank you so much for your patience tonight. I know you had some other homework to do, so you do have in your packet a synopsis from Nancy on the Johnson and Rockwell renovations and the police station. So Nancy, go ahead, take it, whatever order you'd like to cover the highlights.
Nancy?
It doesn't say, it looks like her microphone is on, but we can't hear her. We're not getting your audio, Nance.
Are you plugged in properly?
How's that?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Well, I was on a Zoom meeting all day, training meeting all day today, using my earbuds, so sometimes it won't switch back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
So the update that I gave you is there's not a lot more major to add to that. The school projects construction parts are substantially complete. And last week on Thursday, the architects visited to go through their punch list. And we haven't gotten a new punch list from them yet because it's only been a couple of days. So we have a OAC owner architect construction meeting tomorrow as usual, although those meetings have gone, used to be weekly, now they're going every other week. So we have one of those tomorrow. I'll get another update then. The site work is kind of the biggest outstanding item at each school. And that has begun and is scheduled to be completed by mid-May. And at this point, we are still over budget on Rockwell, under budget on Johnson, but under budget from the total amount that was approved at the referendum. So while the Rockwell being over, Johnson being under, the only issue with that would be that there are parts of Rockwell that we did, as I had reported, I think the last time, Dr. Carver had gone to the state to ask for an additional amount to be added to the Rockwell budget based on all the environmental abatement that had to happen at Rockwell. And that was just under about $1 million, and that was approved. So those amounts will be reimbursed. The additional amounts at Rockwell that won't be reimbursed, and I don't have a figure on that yet because we're still working on it. If we are moving, in theory, moving some money from the Johnson budget to the Rockwell budget to get that to be in line, some of that might not be reimbursable. And again, last we heard, we were still trending at that about 43 cents, 43 cent reimbursement, 43 cents on the dollar reimbursement for the reimbursable costs. So that was a good report that we had on that. And we'll have to recheck on that as we go along. And that's, I don't know if you want to ask any questions on the school projects first before I move along.
Yeah, I'll ask a question. The other day I was driving through the campus there. There's really at schools closed, a traffic jam. Is that because the bus thing hasn't been opened up, or I understand that Rockwell's supposed to have a separate bus entry and then parents pick up as another one.
Right. So there's a combination of things that are going on there. There is the at Rockwell, the bus loop is actually, the back bus loop is open and ready to be used, but it's actually not being used right now because of all of the schools. What they found is due to COVID restrictions on how they have to have parent pickup happen. So the parents used to have to drive, and this is all the schools, or the elementary schools at least, where the parents do pickup. The parents would have to drive to the parking lot, park their car, go to the pickup place, which I'm most familiar with Barriere School just because we use it as a polling site. They would have to go to the gym doors, receive their kids, so the teacher would have to recognize the parent in order to give the kid to the parent, and then they'd take the kids to the car and leave. Well, they can't do that because of COVID. And so they've created in all of the elementary schools a big loop, and the parents stay in their cars, they drive through the loop. The parents, or the teachers and the aides who are working on the pickup part know the parents, know the car, get the kid, bring the kid out to the car, put the kid in the car and leave. There are more parents doing pickup of their kids now with COVID because of probably fears that the kids will be exposed on the bus kind of thing. They don't wear their masks, etc. So I think fewer kids are going on the bus and more parents are doing pickup. So that backup is kind of a combination of those things. At Rockwell, they are not using the back bus loop right now because of the parent pickup. They're actually using that back bus loop for parent pickup because there's more space. So there are fewer people on Whittlesey, even though there's cars all over the place on Whittlesey, even though they stagger the pickups between all the different schools. So, I'm sorry, in a way, that parent pickup situation is temporary until things get a little bit back to normal. And even with the rework of the bus loop at Rockwell, they still may have that be the parent pickup site because there's more space to do that than there would be if they did it in the opposite direction. And it's been noticed, it's been noticed by a lot of people. It was one complaint we received during the referendum because there's a 15-minute window where that backup happens. And as soon as the pickup's done, it's flowing again.
Yeah, but the question comes down to, in other words, the architects, when we accepted the design, that if I recall correctly, buses were supposed to use the rear entrance and parents are going to use the front entrance. Is this the way we're going to go in the future, or we're going to?
No, as I said, this is a COVID thing.
Yeah,
that
I understand.
They've had to do a lot of redirecting. They've done redirecting of the parent pickup due to COVID. As I said, in all the schools, the parents are not getting out of their cars to go get the kids. They stay in a kind of line and go through and pick up the kids and come back out. And it's much more
confusing.
It's not confusing to the parents because they've been doing it all year. And
Nancy, could I just jump in for a second? Just
and
because
Dion has
two
done
kids in two schools.
Yes, Dion has done this. So
yes, I mean, this has been going on the entire school year. There's a huge population of parents who are choosing to take their kids to school instead of riding the bus.
They don't want to be on the bus.
It's all due to COVID. Like nothing that is going on with drop off and pickup is this year is the norm. This has everything to do with COVID.
Yep.
And traffic is it takes 30 to 40 minutes to get your kids dropped off at school if you don't leave at the right time. So any of these issues that you're seeing, you can't, this is temporary. You've got to let things get back to normal and parents start using the bus system, and they will. We all will, but this was just not the year to do it. It's a big enough step to put our kids in the classrooms. It's a whole nother thing to put them on school buses. And so I for one think that the schools have done an exemplary job of trying to manage the traffic at the schools that they've had to manage this year, but there's no way that you can compare this to a normal school year. And I'm going to myself, but just have been dealing with this all year.
Yep, and I agree that it's a COVID thing. It has nothing to do with the design of both the Rockwell bus loop and the Rockwell parking or the Johnson, because it happens at Berry School too, and most likely it happens at the middle school. Don't know how much parent pickup happens at the high school.
No, it happens at the middle school and the high school. It's everywhere.
So it's everywhere, and it has nothing to do with the design of Johnson or the design of Rockwell. And
I was only concerned that we're establishing a pattern that I'm talking non-COVID next September, October, whatever. Are we going to continue?
How they're going to make it operate.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the Board of Ed and Dr. Carpenter's staff will have to look at how the school's going to continue to deal with this, because I kind of think too that parents are not going to be able to do parent pickup and parent drop off continually into the next and future school years. Once the COVID things change, things slow down. If parents have been working at home, that works great. They can take their kids, they can bring them home. If they've got some office somewhere, the kids are going to be on the bus. And so I think I don't know what percentage, although I think Dr. Carver could probably tell you, but there's a huge percentage of kids not taking the bus and being dropped off and picked up by parents this year. Huge percent. The buses are it's almost ridiculous to have buses, but.
Money saving opportunity here next year.
I don't know if I'd make big changes based on that.
So I have a question. Just in the interest of time, I kind of want to just throw out a couple of questions here. Did I see the remediation work on the police station wall? It was to begin on Monday. Did that happen on time?
So Yeah, I hadn't gotten to the police station yet. I was,
I know, I read ahead.
right now just
course,
doing the schools to see if anybody had any school, any other school questions. But yes, that was supposed to start. And in some of the back and forth emails, I had asked the question of how the Public Site and Building Commission was to be involved with this remedial work. I know they were supposed to start on Monday. I emailed Captain Pugner to ask if they had started and did not get a reply yet. I have not gone up there to check, although we've had a lot of rain the past 2 days, so I don't know how much they can do. And
Okay, well, yeah, we can follow up on that.
yeah, and so again, I still have the question as to what how how the Public Site and Building Commission is to be involved with this part, since it was something that kind of was, went through. There was the Becht report, and then there was all back and forth and discussions, and then the go-ahead was given to Downs to start the work. And I don't know whether we need to have them report to us on a regular basis as they had in the past, or whether they report to the Board of Selectmen now. And once they are complete, how are we involved? How do we go back to doing things the way we were?
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
Nancy, your last report, you said they were going to build a test site, okay, and test it, whether it was leaking. Has that been done?
So that's part of the process. So there was a step-by-step process that was given by Downs, and that's part of the step-by-step process. So that has not been done yet. The work just started. The work was supposed to start on Monday. And as I said, I'm not sure if the work has started yet, because I haven't been up there to check, and I haven't had a reply, because Downs is supposed to be coordinating the work being done and the schedule, and they're being there through Chief Pugner and his staff to make sure, like if they need cars out of the way, et cetera, they take care of that. So the test block, it's actually going to be a section of the block wall that will be, the sealer will be applied. So they're the step-by-step process of cleaning, doing any repointing necessary, and then applying the sealer will happen before the entire thing is done, because then they will do a water on that.
The reason why I asked, I'd like to be there when they're doing the test.
Okay, I'll have to find out when that's going to be.
All
So
right.
we'll have to find out what their schedule is.
As a matter of fact, I think we should have sort of a Board of Selectmen's meeting observing this test. It's too hot of an issue here in town.
Well, if you do have a Board of Selectmen meeting observing the test, you're going to have to call a meeting, a special meeting,
Yeah.
post it and leave it for the, leave it.
Yeah, no, we can do that. Same procedure as for like a field visit. Post it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we can do that.
So, and then able to attend.
Okay.
And so so that's the police station. So we'll have to find out how we're going to get reports on the remediation as the step-by-step processes are continuing, and I will have to figure out how that's going to be done.
Yeah,
And
we'll circle back on that offline.
Yep.
That's fine.
and then as far as the center renovations, Matt, you had emailed me about possibility of grant funding, et cetera.
Yes.
And so I guess we need to start looking at, is that a possibility, and what kind of things do we need to have in place to be able to possibly apply for a grant? Do we need updated plans? Do we
No,
need?
actually, at this point, all we need is to update the cost figures, because that's what there's a possibility of grant funding to do the front end of the GP room. So that was the last conversation that we had and with Eric too. So we just need to take those plans that had been done in the past and update them. And then Phyllis will deal with the grant part of it.
Okay. So we had never gotten an actual proposal with costs or a professional estimate. It was kind of more like a guesstimate.
Yeah.
So if we need to do that, we need to either find somebody to do it pro bono or pay some money to have it done.
Yep.
And the other projects like police station and the school projects, we had, those both had professional cost estimators doing the cost estimates, and they were kind of the part of the project budget. So if we need to come up with a guesstimate, or we need to find somebody in town who can possibly put something together. I know John Menti talked about the possibility of having it be what he called a design build project, where you have one company that does both the design part and the building part. I'm not sure if that would be a good fit for this, because we're going to discuss it further and see.
Okay.
But a suggestion I would make, because I've talked about this, I actually talked about it at a meeting a few meetings ago, in looking at doing that front part of which is now the main entry into the municipal center. Part of it was redoing the entry doors and that entryway, because that's one of the handicapped access into the building. I've also noticed, as we've only been using that door, although some people go in and out some of the other doors in the front and they don't lock properly, etc. I'm wondering if those doors ought to be looked at too, as far as being replaced to just for something new that's, I think Greg's always up there trying to fix them when somebody goes through and they don't lock, and the one near your office, the one near the town clerk's office at that ramp.
Yeah, Nance, that's a maintenance issue. That's a different issue.
But I'm not sure if that would be, if they're maintainable anymore, or if they're just old enough and used enough where they might need to be replaced. So I guess you'd have to check into that, or we'd have to check into it.
Hey, Matt, if I can, maybe check with Phyllis, what information do you need? Do we need an official cost estimate, or can we work off the guesstimate?
I don't know yet. Just for the first part of this, we just need, we've had a plan.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
like Nancy said,
there are,
yeah,
right, Nancy? There are plans for the bathroom and that.
Just that lobby. Yep,
Yeah.
the lobby, the two bathrooms
Right.
on either side, getting rid of
Right.
the stairs on one side, doing any abatement in that area, raising the ceiling to be a little higher.
yeah.
And then GP room doors and the entry doors, and then the that entrance area outside the door, which is all kind of cracked and possibly leaks into the downstairs senior center area.
So those plans and specs are in place, correct?
Yes. Yep.
All right, so that's what I believe Matt is talking about.
Right,
So he can
right.
post to Phyllis and.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
So do you need us, other than a cost, to come up with a cost, do you need us to do anything with the plans right now, or you've got to wait and see what the process is?
So just the cost for now.
Okay.
Then we'll work on the grant.
Great, okay.
All right. Thank you
Any
very much.
any other questions from anybody?
Just one last question. The school project is done now, correct?
No,
Rizzo's
No,
still
no.
on the site.
no, so Rizzo is still on site. There's still, like I said, punch list items going on, and site work is the other major thing. And there's a couple of other little items that we're waiting for delivery of certain things, because it was backed up a little due to COVID. But they're kind of minor things. Schools are occupied and they're working on getting, going from having temporary COs to having permanent COs.
They haven't finished landscaping around Rockwell yet, have they?
Well, they did, that had less stuff, site work to do. So they did a little bit of regrading in a couple of areas and hydro seeded the really steep bank in the back by the back bus loop. And then the area that goes down to Whittlesea. And then they have to repave the entry to the bus loop. Those are kind of some of the major site work issues at Rockwell. Johnson had a lot more with the area around the softball field, the handicap access down to the softball field, the whole entire soccer field in the back. And then paving the access road that goes to the back.
Matt,
Yep.
at one time or another, sometime in the future, we should have a walkthrough of all of this from the Board of Selectmen's point of view of this, of the renovations of the schools.
Sure. Yep, we'll do that.
Well,
All right, great. Thank you very much, Nance.
Yep, no problem.
thank you, Nancy.
And that concludes our agenda. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So,
Second.
by Rich, second by Paul. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, take care. Thank you for everything tonight.